The hatter's mad, the rabbit's late, the March hare's getting quite irate. The dormouse has to hit the way, no ordinary day in Wonderland. Anything goes, a playing card will paint a rose, paint it red so no one knows the rose was really white, but that's alright. Anything goes in Wonderland.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the first episode of Wonderland Wednesday in quite some time. I know it's been a while since the last episode, but as I said before, these are going to become a bit less frequent as I start focusing on my other series. These will mainly happen when I have a chance to film with my cousin Sarah, and we usually don't see each other more than like once or twice a month these days. Anyway, today I'm on my own because I'm reviewing the 1995 animated version by Good Times Entertainment, which was recently requested by one of our viewers. I believe it was Xenia Franklin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There are actually several versions that were recently requested by a few different viewers, but most of those requested ones I've been saving to watch with Sarah, so they will be coming in the future. I hadn't really looked into this one though, so I decided to check it out, and right away I could tell this is probably one that Sarah would not really want to watch. She wasn't really that impressed with the last animated version we watched together. I believe that was the 1988 version, but I can't really say I was that impressed with it either. My biggest compliment of that version is pretty much the same for this one, in that it isn't terrible, but when you've seen as many terrible versions as I have, that's not really a very high bar to cross. This version seems to have been made to cash in on all those dollar store shoppers in the 90s, probably some well-meaning grandmothers who might see this tape and think it's a suitable replacement for the obviously more expensive Disney version. Spoiler alert, it's not. My apologies to Xenia and all the other fans out there, because it's obvious from the comments on the original movie that this does actually have fans, but I'm sorry to say I'm not really one of them. Like we said in our review of the 1988 version, the biggest thing that this one has going for it is the nostalgia factor from the people who may have watched it growing up. Almost everything else about this really made it a chore for me to sit through. It did have a few things about it that I thought were creative, but those moments seemed to be few and far between. My biggest criticism, well, maybe my second biggest criticism, is that for a good portion of it, it's just kind of boring. Like, I kept pausing it to go do other things on the day that I had planned to watch it, and I ultimately forgot I was watching it and didn't get back to it until a week later. And then I was kind of dismayed to see that I had only watched about 15 minutes when I assumed I was almost done with it. It felt so long. My biggest criticism of the movie is the awful, repetitive music. Like, they had songs that literally repeated themselves word for word over the exact same animation, like on a loop. They didn't even bother animating new footage to play under the repeating song, or like writing new verses to play over repeating footage. It was a big factor in what made the movie so boring and painful. It was just lazy, cheap, and annoying. Plus the songs were like, I don't want to say they're catchy, but they were like just catchy enough that like they're going to get stuck in a little kid's head and they're probably going to annoy their parents singing it. Like, there was a song about all the things the letter M stands for. Yes, that was a real song in this movie. Why? This is Wonderland, not Sesame Street. Not that there's anything wrong with Sesame Street, but I don't want a lesson about the letter M in the middle of an Alice in Wonderland movie. That was probably the only really annoying thing about this movie. Like I said before, its main offense is that it's just kind of boring. Alice herself is just a very boring version of her character. And for some reason she's American, and that just seemed to enhance how boring she was. Not that being English would have helped the script, but for some reason her accent just really stood out to me as wrong and dull in this version. And the character designs, not just for Alice, but for everyone in the movie, were just boring and uninspired. Just the most generic, boring-looking cartoons you could think of. Wonderland is supposed to be, like, colorful and fun and creative, not flat and dull and boring. Now, for a few things that I did like, and they are small things, but in a movie like this, you have to really look for the small things to help you through it. I really did like the table for the Mad Tea Party. Not like the table settings, like the dishes were also kind of boring looking, but the shape of the table. It's kind of a weird thing to actually look at and like, but the wonky, zigzag, crooked shape, it really seemed like a nice, Wonderlandy touch that I'm kind of surprised I've never seen before in any other version. Like, some other good version needs to make a crooked, wonky table. I liked that touch. I also liked the bit with the caterpillar's mushroom, when Alice is trying to figure out which side is which in order to shrink and grow. And instead of like going left and right, she ultimately decides to take from the top and bottom, which I thought that was just another kind of creative choice that I hadn't seen before, and it kind of makes sense. I don't know that it's book accurate, but I mean, if you're going to take the liberties that they took with this movie, I'd prefer they be creative ones, and this one, in its own small way, seemed creative to me, and I did like it. I didn't like that they omitted the pig and pepper scene, but I did like that in its place they used the scene with the bird mistaking Alice for a serpent. Like, so few versions even bother referencing that scene, so to actually have one actually do the whole scene was kind of nice. And that's really about it. All in all, it's just boring. It's inoffensive, but it's uninspired, and there's not much about it that I can really recommend. Like, I think I liked the 1988 version better, which was also kind of boring and uninspired, but it had like an 80s vibe to it that I did kind of like. This one was just like the most boring, generic 90s dollar store version of any story. It's just, I can definitely see the nostalgia appeal for people who grew up with it, but if you didn't, I can't really say there's much here for me to recommend. Maybe if you have kids, but even then I'd say go with the Disney version instead. All in all, not horrible, but not that great either. Oh well. Okay, I think that's going to be all for today's Wonderland Wednesday. I can't say for sure when the next one will be, but I can tell you that Sarah and I have already decided to watch the 1972 version the next time we get together. It's one that has been requested multiple times, so I figured it was high time that we made time to actually watch it. I don't know exactly when that'll be happening, but probably within the next month, 2 months, somewhere in there. It will happen soon-ish. So you can look forward to that, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Lost in dreams, the Cheshire Cat is